Good morning. Welcome to another episode of Tea with Rich, where this week we do the second half of Erik's interview, 90 days into his retirement, where we touch on things like the lonely road of leadership, understanding patterns in our own work habits for success, the power of focus, like that time we decided to stop doing everything for everybody and get into e-commerce only. And this idea of understanding that at the end of the day, we are builders, whether that's boards or companies or investing. So great dialogue, and I hope you enjoy it. Thank you.
Another day, or you have full edit mode. I was notified that you had shown up at the pad, just so you know.
How did you get notified?
Let's just say the sources still circle back.
Come on.
Swear to
What
God.
does notified mean? I can't wait to hear this story.
I was made aware that, well, it was pretty easy. Like, it was kind of a, why is TJ at the pad? And I'm like, don't know. I mean,
well, I wasn't at the pab. They were doing a dinner the night before the pab at a public restaurant that we just happened to know about. And we knew it was an open restaurant because we Googled that shit and saw the layout. So we happened to go to have dinner there.
See, well, this is the opposite of, I would have gone to any place but there. That's the,
we wanted to go say hi to people.
I know. You guys have friends and relationships, so it's all good. Hey, not judging.
Yeah, who is that? Because there's, who's the chick from Rafter that's on the pab now? I don't remember her name. I gave her a hug. She looked shocked when she saw me. But, again, Alec.
Well, what else were you, like, Rich, you must have had business that, I mean, I see you're, like I said, you're trying to cook up a new gig. Rich has all kinds of active stuff going. I mean, what's the vibe down there? Is it still just thriving?
At NRF?
Yeah.
Super high energy, super excited. It was like back to olden days, like pre-COVID energy, pre-COVID dialogues, pre-COVID sort of, wide open sort of thinking.
I think that
about
people
everything.
are very optimistic. I mean, I think last year was hard for a lot of people. Q3 was real hard, but I think people are optimistic for sure.
Yeah.
That's the vibe I got.
And you know what else was neat? I don't know if you noticed it, Rich, and I didn't go in the floor. I was outside, obviously, because I was badgeless, but there was no buzzword bingo this year. I mean, on the floor, everyone would they won't cut the shit with everything's AI now. I just bought a hydrogen water bottle that says it's AI enabled. You want to talk about just so it's to tell me how many I drank out of it in a day. But it wasn't, other than the brands, but NRF did not play into the buzzword bingo. NRF was everything. It was about looking forward and looking back and learning and getting back to business basics and KPIs and real stories. It wasn't this big, pretend, what was this year's doodad of the show. So I thought that was neat. And then I did I was down there meeting with a lot of people around advisory work. So, it shouldn't come as a surprise to anybody that, advisory work and mentoring is kind of is where my jam is in the agency side. And of course, investing. I mean, I'm fucking everywhere. But no, it was good. And it was just nice to get down there. And it was good to get Jack around everybody and have him meet folks, because he still doesn't know what he wants to do when he gets out of school. He could go in a lot of different directions, and, I treat him like a buddy. I don't treat him like he's my kid. So, but it's all good. Erik,
yeah,
you get a chance with Rich and I. We've basically been on the nothing train.
Yeah.
For a little while. You got any questions for us? You always have questions for me, but I mean,
well, I guess we're back to this point where, like I said, we all have this ability to sort of craft this phase. I think you're doing it, whether you're doing it intentionally or not. I guess the question is, Rich, you've been at it longer. T, you've been at it a year. Now you've had a year, T, and Rich a few years. Like, what do you wish you had done more of or less of in the early period of stepping away? Did you get back into things too fast? Did you not get back into things fast enough and you got yourself kind of bored? I mean,
We're probably
3 months in, and I was the last 3 months of the year kind of like throwaway anyway. So it wasn't like I was going to get, you had holidays and all that. So I feel like 2025, now's my time to all right, reset. Again, I'm not looking to overbook myself. I love the buckets I described in the beginning, so I'm feeling good. And it's a nice balance, but
So for me, it's funny you asked that question, and we didn't pre-roll this, but I wish I made a larger effort to stay in touch with more people over the past year. Like I would say only in like the second half of my year did I really do that. The first six and a half months was pretty tough for me. I was waiting for everyone else to reach out to me,
Yeah.
and they don't, right? And for somebody, Eric, you know, because you saw me every day, for somebody that every day had demands on the fly and everybody needed something, and I was just always available for that, and it was always inbound, very rarely outbound in the business. It caught me off guard. So I think in the beginning, I wish I was a little bit more studious about staying in touch with people and getting in touch with people that I had actually lost touch with prior to that, right?
Yeah.
Which is what I admire about your little technique and strategy for the coaches club and the golf sims is that, you know, you're bringing a different person out. I love seeing Chandler last week when I was there with Goody, but
Yeah.
I wish I stayed in touch with people, and anybody that knows me over the last year knows over the last 5 months, I've gone back to my old way, which is I'm the guy, you know, texting everybody. Gooby's birthday was yesterday. I texted him. I talked to Nava this week. I talked to JB for an hour, Rich, actually this week. So
Right.
I wish I did that more because that kind of keeps me alive and,
Well, yeah,
you
well,
know,
you're doing it now. I mean, so all right, that
correct.
makes sense. Yeah, that makes
Yeah, in a
sense. 'Cause I
different way.
do it. It doesn't take long. Like even the crew, right? The J, like that hasn't been much. We've kind of drifted. We've had a couple of emails, but it goes fast from that day to day. What about you, Rich?
Yeah, I mean, TJ, you and I were kind of handled it opposite, right? You know, and so if I had to, I mean, I didn't say everyone, but a lot of people who know me said that you need to take some time off. You should take a sabbatical. You should really like, you know, go do a silent retreat or go do something with myself and just, kind of think about what you want to do next and just spend some time. Like, don't jump into anything. I did exactly the opposite of that. Right. And some of it was the circumstance. I mean, story for another time, but you know it, I think. But, I got to the day before what my last day was going to be. Right. So I got to June 30th and my last day was, July 1st was when I was out and they hadn't made an announcement. There was nothing, and I'm like, you guys are fucking stupid. I mean, so, and then they said, okay, we're going to, we'll put you part-time for 4 months, right? And part-time was 8 hours a week, right? So one day a week. Cause I'm like, you got to do some kind of a transition. You can't just be like, hey, Rich is gone. Right. And so it was crazy, Eric. I mean, you maybe didn't hear that story. It was insane. I mean, I could tell more of it later, but so, so then I have like 4 months where I'm working one day a week. And so then the contractor, like, we haven't done this before. It's a new kind of contract. Like, let's do this contract. And I'm like, okay. But I put in there, like, I want to get on some boards, right? So, because someone was asking me to be on a board, but non-competitive boards, not in commerce, right? So I went on this Upshow board. Scott pulled me on a board. I helped him with sales. So I kind of went right. I was doing 8 hours a week at CAP, but then I went right into, let me help the sales team. Let me help you build your sales team. Let's get your pipeline. You're missing some phases, some kind of fun stuff for me, not hard, right? And
So
not full time.
you haven't taken time off yet.
No.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying to you. Like, so
Yeah.
I was 8 hours a week and then I did that board. And then once I was out of CAP 4 months later, then I was on, the Phenom board. And then, I kind of made a little mistake on, taking on too much on kind of the hero board. Cause that one was like 30 hours a week. And that was way too much, so I jumped way over
That
my
ended up being
skis.
worth it, though.
Way over my skis, right? So then it backed off, maybe a year later, and I took a breath, and then I'm writing a book at the same time, right? And I'm leading leadership groups at the same time, and I'm trying to get the sales program going. So
Yes.
I guess to say, Eric, like I did too much in my first year off, and I think some of it was because I was scared. Just to be totally honest, everyone's like, you should take time off, and to me, that was like a nightmare.
Yeah.
Do
Right.
nothing. Like, I think you're brave, TJ, because that was like my nightmare. Like, literally do nothing. Like, I need some structure. I'm afraid I will decompensate. Like, I
I'm
literally didn't know what would happen to me.
I'm getting anxiety realizing that I was the only one that literally just took a year off. So, no one else had exited. I mean, Dylan was, what did Dylan told me? He said I took 7 hours off. Erik, I'm proud, dude. I'm proud of you. I mean, I didn't, you're a year and 2 weeks in. I mean, 3 months, a couple weeks in. I wasn't sure how you were going to handle it. Like, you're so regimented with your schedule, and like, you got your little book and your handwritten notes. And then you don't know, Rich, but what Erik would do is he'd come in the morning, and he would like grab fresh white paper, and he would like on every piece of paper, he would like write what a thing that needed to be done the day or the week, and they would be on his desk. And then when they were done, he'd stack them up and move them to the back, sometimes to the right side of his desk. But
it's funny you say that, because I didn't want to have all this stuff and paper around. It was kind of started. So I kept, by the way, this little book I just brought up, it's called like This Era. I don't know. It's got, you start out with like, what's your vision? It's got all the little things you fill out, right?
What other book?
You journal, but you do it more open-ended. And I kept saying, I got a journal, but you open the journal, you're like, oh, all right. I found that actually writing out my to-do list, I write out my schedule, I put a couple of notes, there's a quote, like this little thing gives me this little grounding. And then if I want to go have a coffee I bring this with me. So this is like my little thing now. I don't work on my laptop anymore. So I only do work right here at this desk, which, T, was ground central for like COVID. Like, this is where I work. By the way, I'm on an iMac for the first time, actually looking at a big screen, not a freaking tiny laptop, for the first time in 20, 30 years. So like, the kids in the family bought this for me. I'm like, guys, I'm always on the go. So this sat off in the corner. Now I have this nice screen. This is like luxury. I don't work on a computer outside of right here. I just come in, and then I bring this little book with me. And so I feel like freer and just like, like cut free from that work thing. And to me, that's the freeing part. Teaching at UNH, doing all that other stuff, that's not work, right? Those are things I'm deciding to do.
Yeah.
Having coffee, talking about real estate, I love it. I love the idea of building stuff. I mean, my whole, everything, T, that I did, I mean, kind of, I look back and I said, okay, you started Pixel, jumped on the board of 3S Art Space, jumped on the board of the Optima Bank, went over to UNH when they were building. Everything had a building component. I use like that word very intentionally. Like, it was all of them were building, right? They were early on in building. And as soon as I got to a point where they were kind of in autopilot, I'm like, this isn't really as fun anymore.
Yeah, builder versus operator. Yeah.
It's not coincidental, right? There's a reason why you gravitate to some things and away from others, right? We didn't go on the board at the music hall, not because it's not a great organization. It's just, it already had 30 board members. It was off and running. It was fine. Yeah. 3S was new, needed like early young energy, right? So when you find those many common themes, you got to go, okay, now you can reverse engineer into new common themes of things like that. All right, why real estate? Well, you're building new things. You're taking abandoned properties and turning them into like apartments and mixed use real estate. And so there's always that tie-in. And now you just know yourself that much better. You do it on purpose versus what you think is by accident, so.
I haven't gotten to that point yet, actually. But I do like what you just said, because I am more of a builder, but I'm a builder. I like being a builder because of operational experience. But I want to go back and ask, what is the booklet thing that you use to organize everything? What's it actually called?
It's literally called, and by the way, I love it because it's called This Is My Era. And I think it's meant to be quarterly because it's got like by the day, by the week, by the month. So if you filled it out perfectly, it'd be like full quarter, and then you'd stack it up.
I just had to grab this because I still carry this around.
Yeah.
The Lion CG book.
So This Is My Era planners is
planner,
what it is.
Yeah.
This is my era.com is era, ERA, not my enunciation with three
cool.
H's. But all
so
right,
it's
cool.
like,
I might go grab one.
Well, then when you look, then as I flip the page, and by the way, I used to always have to rewrite my to-dos. Now I just go back and I go, all right, which one didn't I check off? I mean, it's enough structure, but loose enough. And I'm giving myself the grace. Like if I just want to write some notes off to the side, it's like my little journal tee with a little structure to it. I guess the best way I could describe it.
Well, it's a more mature version of so a lot of people don't know, Erik is the only person I knew to this day that still always got the brand new 12-month planner. And he writes amazingly tiny and with white and carries white out with him, right? And he literally used, since the day I met you, you've had a 12-month planner notebook and you have meticulously maintained that thing.
Well, yeah. Remember that? So
Yeah.
one time I always had the 12-month planner. You open it up, it's got all the months. And one time, I remember Gail comes in, she goes, Eric, we're getting a tax audited or whatever. We have to come up with what your schedule was because all the driving mileage or something. Like, I didn't keep track of my mileage. And she's like, well, we're thinking like, wait a second. I go, I've written down every place I've been in the last like 3 years on this place. So we pulled it out and we knew everything. And that was like my ledger and it saved.
How many, hold on, last 3 years? I mean, you've been doing it since we first started. Like, you must have 20 years. Did you save them or what do you do with them?
Well, yeah, that's the stuff, T, that in my office, I went and I got it here now. Like, just, I don't know what, it'll probably sit there for another 10 years, but like, I've got all those by the month planner. You have by the day, by the month, by the year. These are by the month.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
I just have this Pixel notebook. I have like 50 of these things. And you, Eric, you've seen me do it for 30 years. I put a date in. I don't always do it every day. And I have my to-do list. I have reminders. I literally have all the guests that I want to have on here.
All right. Well, TJ used to take old scrap paper. You'd think he was saving the planet. He would basically take 8x11 paper, take the back side that was empty, rip it in half, staple it together. That was his notebook. Like, dude,
here it is. I'm still, hold on.
Binder clips it.
Look, I'm still doing it. Look, these are photos of the hive that I ripped
TJ's, planet, save the planet contribution right there.
That's awesome.
I have literally probably a 30-inch stack of these things going back to like 95. Listen, this is what I do. I'm a note taker. You're organized. You get a book. It's all in there. I'm like, I have receipts. I have envelopes. I have bills I don't pay because I don't want to rip them open because a couple of the letters are going to fall off, whatever I told myself. It's just the way I think. So I do like the "this is my era" thing, though. I might try that. I love these little Pixel notebooks, and I write, like, I call them notions, and then I have the date that I used them. So like August to whenever I'm done, and I'll save them. I got a couple back there, but yeah, different strokes for different folks. But it is what it is.
So, Rich, when are you coming back from Mexico?
Well, I went to NRF because we came down here right after Christmas, and then I'm going to Ojai. You mentioned TEDx. My wife's giving a TEDx talk in Ojai, California, on February 2nd. So we're going there for a week, and then but our schedule is usually January, February, March here in Mexico, with trips back and forth. And then I'll go to Shop Talk end of March. So once a month I guess back in the States for something, but our schedule is to be here for, those 3 months. Chicago's not great those 3 months. And this past week, I did a leadership week down here. So I had 10, 11 guys down here. We did a leadership week. And then my wife's doing her women's leadership thing. Well, not leadership. I shouldn't, well, it is leadership, but she does a women's more self-care retreat.
Yeah.
In March. So nice. I might have to get out of here for that. I might have to go somewhere.
Yeah. Mine must have my leadership invite must have gone to my spam. I don't even remember reading. I don't think.
Well, posted something. It's the leadership groups that we lead. Like we've got a couple leadership groups we meet every 3 weeks for 2 hours. Like what you were just saying, TJ. Like we're all trying to, I think, bring those younger leaders along. So younger leaders, we have women as well in the groups, but not all entrepreneurs, but I'd say mostly entrepreneurs. It's every 3 weeks for 2 hours, and it becomes there's 8 guys and then Scott and I, and it becomes almost like their life advisory board, right? Like, I think being a CEO, it can be really lonely. I mean, you guys had each other, right? But I think it can be a lonely job. You can't tell your employees sometimes what's going on with you, right?
Yeah.
And so who do you get to talk to?
I can't imagine being a sole proprietor. I met with a kid at NRF for a half hour or so that literally owns an agency by himself. He's got a couple phantom stock partners, things like that. But like, I can't imagine. And Eric and I, we could only, we were the only people we could talk to a lot of time. You can't bring that stuff home,
Yeah, we'd always say, like, do you want me to help you, or are you just venting, right? Kind of like kind of like you should say to your wife, like you say, all right, do you need me to help? Do
Am
you
I
need to
just
solve this?
listening or am I solving this? Yeah,
Right. Am
that's
I
a
just
good
listening or
clarification.
solving?
There was a lot of that actually, because who do you go to? Like, I don't, I have
No, for
no, I mean,
sure.
Eric is, and I usually was the one venting more often than not. And then the very thing I was complaining about, I would like open my door and go out and like address it. Like, I love this thing. Like, it was my favorite thing to do of all time with a smile and get it done. But when the door was shut, it was like, fuck. But anyways, we're
That's
coming to
true.
a close. Rich, you got anything you want to ask us? You had some good questions last time. We don't need to drag this on, but I didn't know if there's any
Well, I
lingering.
mean, I was going to
We
ask
still
you,
talk.
Eric. Yeah, no, I mean, because you asked like that last day in the office and stuff, and I know for me, I mean, I had a lot of sadness. You know what I mean? And obviously, it happened kind of over a period, right? From the sadness of the first when I sold to Capgemini, like I cried, like I literally cried.
Were you
And then
sad or were you happy? Were happy cry or sad cry?
both. I mean, just because it was kind of my baby, right? Like think of it,
Yeah.
you guys ran it even longer. Like when I signed the contract to sell to Capgemini, it was a happy, we made a decision, but it was kind of a sad end of an era. Like this isn't mine anymore, and I put so much heart and soul into it. So you guys kind of did stages. It would be interesting for you guys to talk about because you kind of rolled up and then sold, but then left, and then leaving Capgemini. I mean, COVID had happened. There weren't that many people in the office, like you're saying, Eric. So when you go in, you pack up your office, and there's kind of like no one there. Like it's not as big of a thing, but there was some mourning, I think, and I'm not sure if you guys dealt with that like through your stages. You had different stages, but I just remember. I mean, and I still, it's great to see people. Like you said, we went to that pab. I see a lot of people that used to work for me. I care for a lot of people. I still talk to a lot of people. Text. Reagan Boone texted me just the other day. I don't know if you saw on LinkedIn, I did a post. I'm coming up on 31 years of sobriety, and I did a post on LinkedIn, so people reach out and, say nice things, but I'm not saying I would change the decision, but I'm just saying it was a moment that I just had some sadness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand.
I think I think honestly, I think I just felt like this was the arc that had to play out, and it was just a matter of time before it's like, all right, this arc has come to a conclusion. You know what I mean? Like, there was, I mean, other than like, really, it was one job, but it was really 100 jobs, right? But when you're two people, and then you're 4 people, and then you're 12, and then you're 10, yeah, it's the job keeps evolving, and then it changed. We got private equity, and it changed. We became part of IPG. And then it was like, all right, this is truly the end of this arc, and I was ready, and honestly,
Cool.
ready just to like have that freedom to explore some other things.
Yeah.
It just felt natural, like just the evolution felt natural.
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah, you
So,
kind of had time because you guys changed a number of different times. Like I just
Yeah.
kind of had one change, and then
yeah, right.
it's kind of
That's right.
drastic.
Yeah, Eric brings up an interesting point where it was 30 years, but it felt like 100 jobs, right? Because it kept evolving. And I think for us, and this is a story we really haven't told. We probably won't get into a lot of detail today, but, even the PE discussion was something that Eric introduced to me. And like every great idea, I hate it immediately. And, the PE thing was, we had made the decision that we thought we could do a better job with backing than just going into what I would call a big or a strategic. The PE moment was a happy moment. Was I emotional? Oh, when I got home, and only my wife and my kids know, but it was a happy thing. But the PE was, we are going to do it the opposite of everybody else. We're not going to try and be an everything company and bring commerce in. We're going to be a commerce company and bring everything, because we still think commerce was at the center. So, and then IPG was the same thing. Like it was like a happy moment. Like, Eric and I had some conversations, I was pushing it, and some of us weren't pushing it. And, Eric is, because we can have honest dialogues about
Yeah.
about what's really going on. I told Eric when IPG came in, I was like, hey, let's just call it a practice run. And he calls me, he's like, this is not going to be a fucking practice run. I was like, who the fuck cares? But again, with IPG, it was like another level. It was
Yeah.
like, oh, geez, this is actually an amazing thing. You get to protect the brand, protect the legacy, protect the
Cool.
people, protect our history, because it wasn't just from PE. It was over 30 years. The IPG deal was just another really happy moment. The only sad moment I had professionally, besides every project that ever went bad at some point during it, which was all of them, for a split second, was leaving. Like when I told Eric, that killed me. I saw the look on his face. I went in, he was in Hive, and I sat down. I was doing a whole reorg, and I'm like, by the way, in addition to this reorg, like, I'm going to go. And the look on his face gutted me, because I know he wasn't expecting it. And then when I actually left, like, going in the office by myself for that last day, I mean, that was sad.
Yeah.
Like, I fucking, I was very upset for a long time, for weeks. And, but every other thing, as Eric said it, and I never thought of it that way,
Cool.
it felt like 100 jobs, and everything was happy. Even when I was upset for good reasons. It was a joyous thing more than anything
That's awesome.
else.
Did you guys lose people through some of those transitions?
Of course.
Yeah.
I remember when Eric wanted to stop doing all the other shit and just focus on e-commerce, so we could be a full service agency, but just for e-commerce. And actually, Eric's done that a bunch of times. If I go way back, I remember Eric introduced the web to me when I was a multimedia guy, and I was like, I don't like the web. It's stupid. It's slow. It's not for me.
Yeah, like I think we've got to make this move.
Yeah. And I was like, and then,
It's a fad. It's going away.
15, I was a modeler in anime, and then 15 years later, he brought e-commerce to me, and I was like, that's stupid. I don't want to just do one thing. I want to do all the things. And we made a conscious effort to not cut staff or cut back. We said we're going to rebuild the plane in the air, and we looked like fools during the time because nobody understood the plan. And as a parent, your kids don't often understand the thinking. We wanted people to select if they wanted to be with us. We didn't want to select who would be with us. And it seemed chaotic, and everyone questioned it. And I hope they all listen to this now, because we never told the story. But we didn't want to decide who was going to be part of just an e-com focus, but still a full service agency. We wanted them to decide, because if we had picked, we probably would have picked wrong. And half of our picks wouldn't have wanted that. So it was a rough couple of years, Eric. You remember when we were trying to make that transition and go all in on Demandware. But it was another thing when Eric brought it up to me. I was like,
well, the way it usually went, right? So we had designers, we had developers, whatever. And someone comes to my office. I mean, Rich, when the minute someone says, hey, can I talk to you for a minute? You know exactly what it means, right? Because it's so far, like, there's not a current, like, if there was a current thing you're dealing with, you'd know that. When it's so out of the blue, like, okay, come on in. And then it was usually like a designer. It's like, look, I want to do apps. I want to do iPhone. I want to do Sitecore. I want to do, like, okay, that's great, but we're not going to do that. And they're like, I understand. So I'm going to make my decision to move on.
Yeah.
And so that's how it happened, right? Everybody, and then there was a core that were on e-commerce already. So they were in the door. And then there was some that sort of figured it out. But,
yeah, that was interesting because we had the one big move, right? And some people were like, I don't want to work for a big company. And well, I didn't really want to work for a big company either, but it was the right move for us, was what was happening in the market. So we lost some people. We asked people, give us a year, see what it can be like. And, a lot of people did stay, but that was another kind of thing where you're like, kind of tough.
You bring up these little transition moments, and, I think what it came down to is, like, I think you get better at pattern recognition, as kind of how I've come to call it, which is, you've seen this pattern, like, you've seen this scatter chart of activity before, and you know what these various scatter chart activities will turn into. And you're like, geez, we lost that deal because they went with this person. Because what happened to you, remember I went to a digital commerce down in, like, Atlanta, and everybody there that was succeeding was doing one thing. One guy was doing PHP. One guy was doing Linux. One guy was whatever. And I'm like, and we were at that point, had grown up to be the jack of all trades because we'd been around longer. And I come back and go, TJ, we have to pick the one thing we're going to do, or our customers are going to decide for us. And I said, if they decide, it's going to be a lot more painful than if we decide. And that was the beginning of we got to go all in on e-commerce, because we had a collection there, Demandware. We had a few clients. We had Echo and Stonewall, and we're like, let's just do this. And these are our best clients.
Yeah.
So
That's,
the
I
pattern
mean, that's a
recognition
tough
is,
one. I mean, we did the same thing because we were doing everything. Like, I don't know if you remember, Eric, like Dave and I started doing staff aug work, right? And then we got
yeah,
into like, custom e-commerce, like .NET, C#. Then
right.
we hooked up with, Demandware in like 2005, like in the beginning, like you guys did. But when the banks crashed, like we were still doing stuff. We were doing SAP, like, implementations and, providing, bodies to people and all of that, but then we said, we got to go all in. We're going all in e-commerce, and we
Yeah,
kind of shed the rest, but the market
yeah,
kind of directed us that way. Because when those banks crashed and everything, 08, 09, like no one was investing in like expense side. Everyone was investing in revenue side. So we're like rationally like, let's go revenue, which is commerce. People want
right.
more
Well,
revenue
and
and shed.
that's what I say, Rich. You were doing that sort of pattern recognition, right?
Yeah.
We didn't call it that at the time. You sort of called it my gut, my instinct, my
Right.
intuition. But what it really was, at the rational, like, you were just taking all these other things. Okay, I've seen this play out. It's like every other part of our life, right? You go, I've seen how this story ends. We should do this, right? And that's why also, as you've been CEO or doing our job for a long time, people come to you with a problem, you really know how to solve it most likely, but you got to kind of go through it. And I noticed towards the end, I was having a lot less patience to do it. I knew it's not fair to these folks if I'm not going to have the patience to work through these things. So it's time to do that. But
That's cool.
yeah, that whole pattern, that's something that I've sort of tried, like, when I say these are the buckets of things I'm doing, the pattern I'm recognizing is like, I like when I'm learning. I like, when I go golf, I feel like I'm learning something new now all the time, like how to,
Yeah.
I'm learning, I'm going on YouTube and watching TrackMan videos and what all this stuff means. And like, it's giving me something to like dive into. It's just limitless. So but how do you do it proactively and consciously and not just let it happen to you,
Well,
and then
that's
design your life around those things that you kind of gravitate towards?
Well, I think that defines those that are successful and those that want to be successful or talk about it. I think there's those that are waiting for it to happen and those that make it happen. But back on the pattern recognition, I remember when you came back from that show and you had met the dude. I remember the story you told me. You had from Atlanta. You met a dude that only did Drupal, that had like 300 or 400 people in Canada. I don't remember where. And you were like, we don't even have to do Drupal anymore. Like, we can have this dude, we can just outsource it. And you had this whole plan for these guys that you met, and it's all they did. And they had hundreds of people. And I think at the time we were like 75 people, 80 people. And we got small. We got down to 50 to be e-commerce focused. And then obviously that.
Well, when you get small, it improves everything. You know who to hire. You know who your customers are. And by the way, more better is the customers know who you are, because that was the worst thing when you're jack of all trades is you don't even know who. If you're like, well, what do you do?
They ask
Well,
you,
man, what do you
what are
need?
you really good at? And you're like, everything. They're like, no, you can't be. What are you really good at? And you're like, no, we can do it all. And they're like, yeah, no. They have to know what you do, right?
The digital commerce for lifestyle brands was like this. You would have thought the oceans parted and we're like, oh my God, let's go with that. And then it just sort of like, it's said in 5 or 6, like 5 words. This is what we do. We do digital commerce, lifestyle brands. And again, you can still have a fringe set of clients, but like that's your 80%. And then they all of a sudden just start coming towards you. And
no, that's cool.
Yeah. So
it was the natural maturation before, because we had some doozy taglines, customers, experience, results, customers, period, experience, period, results. But if you read it, it was.
But again, it speaks to everybody.
I know. I am giving you credit for the narrowing, because what would happen is he would come to me on like a Thursday or a Friday because he knew I would get all pissed off about it, and then I'd like go home for the weekend, and then like I'd come back and I'd be like, all right, I thought about it.
We started as the single source for all your IT needs.
Pretty broad.
Want to hear a funny story about the PE thing? So Erik introduces me to this concept of PE. Now, I have no idea what it is. I don't know what a PE is. I don't know what strategic is. I don't know any of this shit. So he's like, you got to go read this book. So I read this book, I listen to it. And by the time I'm done listening to it and I come in and I'm like, all right, I'm in, let's do this. He's like, I changed my mind. I was like, I just spent a month listening to this book like 2 hours a day, like on like one speed. I hadn't even discovered that you could speed up a narrator. And I was like, and then he does, and I'm like, no, we're doing this. I read the book. I said, I found another book about what happens afterwards. And I read that one too, or I listened to it. And he brings
That's
it to
funny.
me. By the time I come up to speed, he's like, I don't think so. I think we want to stay what we're doing. And then I was like, oh, no, we have to go do this. And it was good.
Well,
It was a good decision. Do you
yeah.
remember that? Do you remember
Well,
when Peter Worrell's book, and then we got snubbed by him, which was even
oh,
funnier.
you're going back to that book. Okay. Yeah. So,
Yes.
but
Then we tried to hire them as our M&A partner, and they're like, "You guys want too much. You're not worth that." We were like, "What?
well,
What market are you
weren't
in?
as tech focused. But again,
Did we get the val we wanted? Yeah, we did.
but all these things that happen, in the moment seem like the negative thing that's going to be the end of the road. And in the end, when you look back, you go, actually, that was a positive thing that led to this other thing, right? I mean,
100%.
and that's a hard lesson to take, even as
No,
much
it
as
is.
you experience that. It's like, in the moment, this is the worst. But when you look back, that turned out to be very beneficial.
Yeah,
TT,
I learned this term EWOP, like EWOP, right? Everything works out perfectly. Right, and I kind of try to hold that, but the underline is that, but it doesn't always look the way I think it should look.
yeah.
What were you
right.
going to say, Eric?
Well, you remember, like, we were ready to do the whole business deal in like 2019, and then went to Dreamforce. It was in San Francisco, and then by 2020, everything went on hold. So we thought that it was done. We're not going to get a chance to come back. But in the end, we all know COVID increased a lot of investment in
Yeah.
digital, so it boosted our business. And the private equity company we ended up working with, we wasn't even in the picture in the first time
Wow.
around. They only showed up the second time around because we had grown by about 30%. And so again, all these little circumstances.
Well, I remember leaving Dreamforce in 2019 because we gave that bartender the TV that you bought so we could do our presentation in the same place. And longest escalator I've ever seen. I think that escalator was like 70 feet. And I remember going in there, and I remember us saying before COVID, like, we didn't like the idea of being part of a strategic, right? Like a bunch of them came in and talked with us and gave us their pitch,
Right.
and we were like, I think we can do this better than they can. And that was ultimately, thank goodness, that it ended how it did. But no, you're not wrong. I just wrote a line. I don't remember where or if I even posted it, but on this whole thing about what we remember, we recall the bad things almost instantly. And I think the good things take conscious recall. And it's a weird thing where the things that taught us the greatest lesson, we call bad, right?
Yeah.
And they're top of mind. And the things that, were actually amazing, but we don't think they were amazing. It's almost this, you really have to go dig those stories.
I mean, if you think about it, we wouldn't have pivoted to if everything was going great, we wouldn't have just pivoted to singly e-commerce. We did that because things were starting to get pretty frayed.
Well, we were descending revenue, right? That was the reality. Is we weren't doing the same, because what happened is the web became commoditized, right? Just like commerce got commoditized.
Well, most good things come out of some period of chaos and sort of down, right? I mean, otherwise you don't change.
Only
if everything's great, you just keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Perceive it as great. So,
well, I think that's the watershed moment for businesses that fail and those that make it. The crafty and creative, they survive because they can pivot. And, I think that's something that you were very good at. You always had sort of turned a knee in the right direction before I caught on. And me, once I was on board, I was on board. So,
it was
on Monday.
Well, I remember thinking how smart you were about all this different stuff, right? That you had to TJ's got to go pitch a healthcare company that wants Sitecore doing this thing. And then I'm like, imagine if TJ, you put all your energy into this one area, like how deep you could go and how much. And I remember you came back from we'd been doing it a while, the whole Demandware thing. And I remember you came back from I think it was a vacation, and we had a call on a Monday morning to pitch a client, and you didn't need days to prepare because it was sort of like it was what we did. You had done that pitch over and over and over. That's even more valuable to the client, because the client doesn't, the client started to want people with domain expertise, right? They didn't want the company that did a little of everything. It all lined up perfect. And I'm like, and you've done that. You've gone deep in deep into a category. It's still a pretty big category, by the way.
It is. But I think what was magic about that was it actually, I was afraid of it at first, but what it actually did was it allowed me to bring this entire body of knowledge and experience unrelated to e-commerce, but sort of related. If we think about composability and kind of what's going on now, I still have all of that in my head. I still can have those conversations, but no, for anyone listening, every great idea that Erik put in front of me, I usually bitched about it and kicked and screamed and then went home for the weekend and then literally would come back on Monday and be like, all right, so I apologize. Let's do it. And that's literally the story of every innovation that we eventually had. I think the reason I couldn't identify the patterns that you were identifying in my own defense, but just thinking about it, you talking about it, kind of this light bulb went off. I think I was too deep in the chaos and hecticness of the moment, trying to produce the projects, mentor the staff, train everybody, deal with customers. Like, I never really had a moment where I came above the mosh pit that you saw and really sort of had a good field of view there. I was in there on the field dealing with a lot of stuff, and sometimes I had to be yanked out of it.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, we ran the EOS thing, Rich. Are you familiar with EOS?
Yeah.
We've talked.
Yeah, sure.
So there's sort of this concept of the visionary and the integrator, right? The visionary is kind of the out there guy. I really feel like I had like 6 moments of visionary, about an hour each in the entire 20. And then I would have to go integrate it. And I just had to get TJ on board with that next thing. And then he would the vision, like, because then you would do that. You know what I'm saying?
I would. It was a rabbit hole that I went into.
So, because I really like then getting all the trains lined up to then execute on that next thing and say, TJ, go spread the gospel out there in the universe.
And spread I did.
Goodness. Yeah.
That's amazing. Well, listen, we're coming up on an hour and a half here. I love the last 20 minutes of storytelling. I now see why Rogan does 3 and 4 hour podcasts, because like the first hour is just like getting all the incidentals out of the way. So maybe we'll figure that out at some point. But Erik, I super appreciate, because I just asked you the other day coming on, for anyone listening, It's actually Saturday for us.
And when you said, hey, can you do it tomorrow? You saw how quiet I got. Like, I'm like, and then you're like, how about a couple of days? I'm like, all right, that feels better.
I was like, yeah, let's just do it tomorrow. You're like, well, I got to go. I got the golf. I got the.
I got my schedule. I got a schedule.
Yeah, like tomorrow's already scheduled, and
He's like, oh wait, let me email Rich right now. Can you do it tomorrow? And I really didn't have a good reason to say no anymore, like I did before when I was working. So I'm like, hold on, let me come up with something. And then by the time I left, we're like, I think he's like, and then you texted me. I mean, we're doing this on a Saturday, which is actually perfect. I went to the gym this morning.
That's nice.
Came back.
It's more relaxed. I love it.
Well, Rich couldn't do it. Rich couldn't do it the next day anyway. So
I love this. Actually, was great because this is a window. I just enjoy getting my coffee and I'm all good.
It's perfect. I'm gonna go up and make another cup. Rich, thanks for coming on short notice. Erik, I love, we only get together every couple of weeks, but I like watching this thing bloom. I was so proud when you went to Costa Rica and when I saw the St. Lucia thing, and I walked in the coach club the other day. You're down there with Chandler, who I literally don't think I've seen in 15 years. It's awesome. It's awesome to watch. You'll probably be back. We'll probably have to do a 6-month and 2-week one just because that's another watershed moment. But
it's always fun to talk, Erik. I always enjoy our conversations.
Yeah. Well, I said I'm watching you guys. You're still out there doing your stuff, and
it's nice.
Yeah. Well, we got to get Scott on here next time. That'll be a actually pretty funny one too. So
yeah.
Well,
let's stay in touch, guys, and we'll hook up again soon, I'm sure.
Excellent. I appreciate it. I appreciate you, Rich. For anyone still listening, thanks for tuning into another episode of Tea with Rich. I am T. This is my buddy Rich, and today we joined by my business partner, still of 30 plus years, Erik Dodier. So thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Take care.